Can you explain the history of Quebec's relationship with France and England?
Of course. The history of Quebec's relationship with France and England is a fascinating and complex tale that spans centuries. Let's start from the very beginning.
Great, I'm eager to learn. So, when did this history begin?
The story begins in the early 16th century when French explorer Jacques Cartier arrived in what is now Canada in 1534. He claimed the land for France and established the first European settlement in Quebec in 1541. This marks the initial French presence in the region.
So, Quebec was initially a French colony?
Yes, that's correct. Quebec was part of New France, a French colonial empire in North America. Over the years, Quebec became a significant French colony with a growing population, and it played a crucial role in the fur trade, which was one of the main economic activities in the region.
What was life like for the people of Quebec during this time?
Life in colonial Quebec was challenging yet vibrant. The French settlers, known as habitants, relied on agriculture and fur trading for their livelihoods. They also established a unique culture, blending French traditions with indigenous influences, particularly from the Huron-Wendat and Algonquin peoples.
That sounds like a rich cultural heritage. But what happened to Quebec's relationship with France?
Quebec's relationship with France remained strong for much of the colonial period. However, in the mid-18th century, a series of conflicts known as the French and Indian Wars erupted, with France and Great Britain competing for control of North America. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris ended these conflicts and saw France ceding Quebec and most of New France to Britain.
So, Quebec became a British colony?
Yes, precisely. Quebec became a British colony, and this transition had profound effects on the population, particularly the French-speaking Catholic majority. The British implemented policies that favored their own Protestant population and sought to assimilate the French Canadians into British culture and institutions.
That must have caused some tension. How did the people of Quebec react?
Indeed, tensions arose. The British imposed the Quebec Act in 1774, which recognized the French civil law system, allowed Catholics to practice their religion freely, and even extended the boundaries of Quebec. While this was seen as a gesture of tolerance, it also further entrenched the divide between the French Catholic majority and the English-speaking minority.
Did this lead to any significant events or conflicts?
Yes, these tensions played a role in the American Revolution. Some French Canadians supported the American rebels, hoping that an American victory would bring more favorable conditions. However, the majority remained loyal to the British Crown. The conflict resulted in some upheaval in Quebec, but ultimately, the British maintained control.
That's interesting. But how did Quebec's relationship with England evolve from there?
Well, in 1791, the British Parliament passed the Constitutional Act, which divided Quebec into two provinces, Upper Canada, now Ontario, and Lower Canada, now Quebec. Lower Canada had a majority French-speaking population and was granted its own legislative assembly, which allowed for some self-governance. However, tensions between the French and English-speaking populations continued to simmer.
So, Lower Canada had some autonomy at this point.
Yes, but it was limited autonomy. The British authorities maintained significant control, and this led to political unrest in the early 19th century. The French-speaking majority, led by figures like Louis-Joseph Papineau, began to push for more political rights and representation.
Did this eventually lead to any significant events or changes?
Yes, it did. The political tensions culminated in the rebellions of 1837 to 1838. These were armed uprisings by French-Canadian nationalists against British rule. However, the rebellions were ultimately crushed by the British, and many rebels were exiled.
That sounds like a turbulent period. What happened after the rebellions?
Following the rebellions, the British government realized the need for a more conciliatory approach. In 1840, the Act of Union merged Upper and Lower Canada into the province of Canada, with the hope of assimilating the French-speaking population into English-speaking institutions.
Did this approach work?
Not entirely. While the Act of Union did result in a single province, It also led to significant political deadlock and tensions between the English-speaking and French-speaking populations. However, this period also saw the emergence of political leaders like Louis Hippolyte Lafontaine and Robert Baldwin, who advocated for responsible government and greater autonomy for the province of Canada.
Responsible government meaning that the government is accountable to elected representatives, correct?
Yes, that's right. Responsible government meant that the executive branch of the government had to be accountable to the elected legislative assembly, reflecting the will of the people.
How did this play out in Quebec?
In 1848, responsible government was achieved in the province of Canada, which was a significant step toward self-governance. French Canadians were able to have more say in their own affairs, and the French language was recognized alongside English in the Legislative Assembly.
That sounds like a positive development. What happened next?
The 1860s brought more significant changes. In 1867, the British North America Act united the province of Canada with New Brunswick and Nova Scotia to form the Dominion of Canada. Quebec, as one of the original provinces, played a central role in the negotiations leading to Confederation.
So, Quebec became one of the founding provinces of Canada?
Yes, exactly. Quebec became one of the 4 founding provinces of Canada, along with Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. This new federation allowed for a certain degree of self-governance while still being part of the British Empire.
That's a pivotal moment in history. How did Quebec's relationship with France evolve during this time?
While Quebec was now part of the Dominion of Canada, its cultural ties to France remained strong. The French language and culture continued to flourish, and Quebec played a significant role in preserving and promoting French heritage within Canada.
Did Quebec face any challenges to its cultural identity during this period?
Yes, there were ongoing challenges. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, waves of English-speaking immigrants arrived in Quebec, leading to a shift in demographics. There were also efforts to assimilate French Canadians into the English-speaking majority.
How did Quebec respond to these challenges?
Quebec responded by strengthening its cultural and linguistic identity. The Quiet Revolution of the 1960s marked a turning point, as Quebecois society underwent significant changes in various areas, including education, healthcare, and culture. French language and culture were promoted and protected more vigorously.
What about Quebec's political aspirations during this time?
The Quiet Revolution also had political implications. It